Hello, folks. Let the other channel catch up, and there we are. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Comic Shop Talk, brought to you by Black Cat Comics in Rockin' Milpitas. Shop online at black-cat-comics.com. I'm your host, Mark Causey. This is my co-host,
Francie.
And we're here to help you stay entertained, have some fun, keep you connected to the comic book community, bring you some comic book news during this time of new comic hiatus and quarantine and shelter in place and pandemania and all that good stuff. So here we are, having fun. Hope you're having fun too. This is an interactive show. So please throw us your questions, your comments, your whatever you might have about the world of comics, and we'll do our best to keep you infotained. So thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, we'll talk a little comic news. We like to talk comic industry news because comic shop news. Because during these crazy times, there's been all kinds of things coming fast and furious. When are new comics going to come out? This, that, the other thing. So in the last couple of days, we got a couple of big news items. The good news and the bad news. The good news is Diamond Comics, the one main distributor of all things comics, is going to be back up and running here in a few weeks. They anticipate new comics rolling out by the end of May. And so that's good news. We're all hoping that I don't know, shops will be able to get people back in and all that kind of thing by the time that's all happening. So the end of May is the tentative time frame for the restart of new comics. So that's a lot of fun.
We should really caveat that. So dates are changing. What's coming when? We don't know yet. If they better not send the last 4 weeks all at once. I would kill everybody. My guess is they're going to stagger some things. So don't count on past release dates as being effective or being the ones that they're going to use going forward. So we've got very little information so far. They're going to try their best to get as many shops as they can, new books by the end of May. But what new books, how many, what they look like, how we can distribute them, all TBD.
Lots and lots of questions yet to be answered.
Lots.
But it was at least great to see them having a plan and getting some things moving in a direction. For a couple of weeks there, we weren't really hearing anything from anybody, and that was making us all a little antsy.
Well, and just to caveat it even further, depending on what state you're in, so we tentatively in California have the shelter in place through May 3rd, but we think it's going to go, most people think it's going to go until June. So even though we're getting new books, we still individually as retailers have to figure out what's the best and safest way to get them to you, whether it's
how we're going to get them and how we're going to get them to you.
Right. So is it safe to bring back curbside pickup, or do we still stick with online orders only? TBD.
All sorts of things. So like everything, stay posted with the YouTube page, the Facebook page, the newsletter, all those good things. We give you guys our info as soon as we get it. We keep you as up to date as we are kept up to date.
Hour by hour, it changes.
And super fast, that really quick. And in the interim, like we've been saying for weeks, catch up on your old stuff, reread some favorites, organize your stuff. Catch up on all those great things that you already have, and or go to black-cat-comics.com and score some more awesomeness. You'll hear that pitch a few more times over the next hour. So now on to the less than good news, and that was about San Diego Comic-Con. I know everybody knew the announcement was coming. We all kind of figured there wasn't going to be a San Diego Comic-Con. That's a little bit of why we did the convention retrospective last week, to be honest with you. Check out last week's episode if you missed it, because it was a lot of fun. But yes, comic book fans, there will be no Comic-Con this year, no big SDCC.
First time in their 50-year history.
Yes, makes us sad, particularly. We've gone to every one since 1996. This would have been our 24th consecutive con, so we're sorry to miss it out. And, you know, there's so much to con with the movie trailers and the Funko releases and the exclusive, all that kind of stuff. And we'll all miss it, but we can all look forward to getting on board with that again at next year or whenever cons are allowed to come back.
So as soon as it's safe for everyone, we will be hosting another Black Cat Comics customer swap meet. So to kind of satiate your convention needs, We've got some vendor friends that we'll reach out to. So we'll have a little mini con here once it's safe for people to gather again.
Correct. If at all possible, longtime customers or regulars and such will, they know and love the Black Cat Comics Rock and Milpitas pre-Comic-Con, Comic-Con. If we are allowed to have significant people here and whatever, then this year it'll be the Black Cat Comics Rock and Milpitas, no Comic-Con, Comic-Con. But like she says, we're going to do our best to put that together, do something fun, cool, and exciting for you guys, because that's what we do here.
That's right, in Rock and Milpitas.
In Rock and Milpitas. So that's comic shop news. Like we say, unfortunately, we are closed to the walk-in public, but we are wide open at black-cat-comics.com for all of your fun hiatus shelter-in-place needs.
And in case it's not obvious or you missed it, Free Comic Book Day has also been not canceled, but postponed, right?
Yeah.
With no date yet?
With no new date assigned to it. They're throwing around August.
So you guys probably don't know this, but just before the shelter in place, we had our display window up front redone with this huge Free Comic Book Day Spider-Man art. I'll post a picture later. It's got the date really big on it, and every day there's 1 or 2 people that come by and take a picture of it. So I just can't wait for May 2nd. All these people,
show up and looking in the window. Where's my free comic?
Not this year. But they'll probably be banging on the door while we're doing this on May 2nd.
Could be. But the future looks bright. Comics will be coming back. There is a plan for the future. There is a plan to get the whole thing rolling again.
Yes.
So there's a lot to be excited about. There's always a lot to be excited about in comics. Like I said in the newsletter this week, comics are inspirational and fun. Comics are a positivity form of entertainment. So if you're a comic book fan, you know about keeping your spirits up and looking forward to the future. So that's comic shop news. Now on to today's topic. Today's topic. And today's topic is always comics. Last Sunday was Easter, and that got us thinking that about resurrection stories without getting religious in any kind of way with anybody. It's just a topic. Superheroes die and come back to life all the time. And so it gave us a big, wide topic to throw out there to you guys to have some fun examples of things.
It was even harder to try to figure out characters who haven't died and come back to life than those that have.
That's really kind of true. Here's your not very official trivia question. Go ahead if you guys know characters that have not died in comics. Go ahead and post those. Because that's kind of fun too. But realistically, like I say, tons and tons of characters have met their great demise and returned a little later, as the X-Men say, I got better. So we wanted to talk about some of our favorites, inspire you to maybe talk about some of your favorites. So why don't you go ahead and get us started with your.
You guys haven't been reading Stephen King's Son. They look exactly alike. They sound exactly right. And they both write horror. Duh, I should have known. But anyway, Basket Full of Heads. We've got all of them online if you want to check them out. So it's a story about a kick-ass gal who is at her boyfriend's house. And while she's there, these escaped prisoners come over to try to rob the house. And she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And she finds this ancient-ass axe in some room, and she gets it out and starts just chopping away at the guys. Chop, 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 chop. What she doesn't realize is it's a famous magical mystical axe, and so anyone that's chopped by it and they chop their heads off, they're not actually dead. Their heads kind of come back to life in there. So she's walking around now with a basket full of heads of these guys that she's chopped to little bits, and it's hysterical and awesome, and I love it to pieces. Pun intended.
Awesome. Basket Full of Heads. All that Joe Hill stuff has been crazy,
really good.
Popular.
It's really good.
Do you want to do another, or is it my turn?
Let's go back and forth. Let's just shake it up.
And I know ahead of time, if you guys caught the Wednesday video, you might have seen some of these, but I'm going to dive a little deeper on some of that.
We're going to go deep today.
Okay, so to me, the first thing that came to my mind is the X-Men. Nothing says dies and comes back like the X-Men. No one dies and comes back like Jean Grey. When you're named the Phoenix, you die and come back. That's what Phoenixes do.
It's in the name.
So I want to do really quickly mention this guy. This is X-Men Epic Volume 5. There's 1,000 reasons why everybody should be buying this book. It starts with, this is the one that collects Giant Size X-Men #1. Unless you're a hardcore fan, you probably don't have a copy, an original first print of Giant Size X-Men #1. They're pretty pricey. A lot of the books collected in here are pretty pricey. The main reason, as far as today's conversation, it contains X-Men 101, which is, 50-year-old spoiler, the death of Jean Grey and the birth of Phoenix. X-Men 101 is a book I have back here on the wall quite often. I have 100 back there, the one that has this cover on it. And like I say, X-Men 101 is the death of Jean Grey and the birth of the Phoenix. And then this is X-Men Milestones, of course, Death of the Phoenix. And it's all right there in the title. So you have the birth of the Phoenix, the death of the Phoenix, and then the rebirth of Jean Grey. This is the one from the 80s. You know, it only takes me about 5 minutes to show you a John Byrne book. This is the one where they launched X Factor, so they needed original Jean Grey to come back. So, of course, they gave it to John Byrne, the guy who killed her in the first place. And so that is 3 really, really excellent, all-time great trade paperbacks that will provide you a ton of great reading and a resurrection story in each one.
Yes.
Obviously, lots of other X-Men have died. I could have mentioned Colossus has both my favorite death and my favorite return. His return in Astonishing X-Men from Joss Whedon. All-time great moment in comics.
All-time great.
Back to you.
Back to me. So Arnell, just answering his question, the Tales from the Dark Multiverse was hardcover only, and we just special ordered it for CJ, actually. But if you want us to special order it for you in hardcover, shoot me an email at info@black-cat-comics.com, or if you want to wait for the soft cover, just let us know. There are no pearly gates for mutants. There's only a revolving door. Well said, Daniel. That's right, Professor X. Good.
Professor X has also died and come back more than once. In fact, Professor X is a clone. You might not know that. Go ahead.
Mind blown. Okay, so of course, one of the very classic resurrection stories is that of Swamp Thing, a scientist who's doing some biological research out in the swamp of the bayou of New Orleans, has his lab blown up to pieces. His wife is killed. He's a firing inferno, and he dives into the swamp, and he resurrects as Swamp Thing. I love him because he's very versatile. Every writer from Len Wein to Alan Moore to, I can't remember who did the last New 52
Jeff
one.
Lemire?
No, Jeff was the Animal Man. Did he do Swamp Thing too? Any hoodle. Everyone kind of takes their own flavor on him. Sometimes he's just like a straightforward, I'm a guy of the green. I don't care what you think. You humans are lame. Sometimes he's a little more human, and he gets with Abby, and they do the business, so he's a little bit more human then. But he's an evolving character and a great resurrection story. I love it when so there's something recently I read, I don't remember, Batman or what. There's like a scene where a bunch of the superheroes are together, and there's just like a little plant with like one little leaf. Oh, it was Hellblazer. That's right. Oh, this is a great story. Okay, so I have to tell you the story. So it's John Constantine turns 40. This is a great Garth Ennis story. And he's all alone. He's all miserable. He's like, oh, I'm just going to drink myself into oblivion for my birthday because no one wants to celebrate with me. Okay, so all of his like superhero magical friends like Zatanna, they all gather and surprise him for his birthday. In the middle, I can't even tell the story, it's so funny. So in the middle of the room one of his friends is this is going to be not rated for all ages. How do I say this? So things that have been recently legal in California, wink, wink, you know what I mean. They go and bring a little version of that, and then they ask the Swamp Thing to make a huge bush of it. And then that's the end of the story. Sorry, long way of saying Swamp Thing's awesome.
Swamp Thing is awesome. And a little like the X-Men, it goes without saying that some of the greatest creators of all time, like she said, have worked on Swamp Thing, not just the writers, but the artists as well.
So good.
Bernie Wrightson.
Bernie Wrightson, what a legend.
Snyder and Sewell, there you go. This doesn't.
Thank you, Arnell.
Doesn't get any better than classic Swamp Thing.
Yeah, season 2. Yeah, the DC Universe version of Swamp Thing hasn't been too bad.
Hey, Masked Panther, thanks for joining us.
Okay, back to you.
Okay, so another one of my all-time favorites. I'm as I said in the video again, I like to show single comics most of the time because I'm huge on the periodicals and I'm old school like that, and I love the comics. But for today's topic, I wanted to bust out some thick, chunky reading while we're waiting for the new comics. Everybody, I think, needs some thick, chunky reading. This is another Marvel epic. This is Volume 4. Again, with these Marvel epics, like the X-Men, the one I showed you is Volume 5, but it really begins the chapter of the new X-Men. You don't have to start these things at Volume 1. You can pick up any old epic, and what's in there it has a beginning and an end, and then it's all awesome. I'm showing you this one because it contains Avengers number 56, 57, 58, the first appearance of the Vision.
Iron Fist.
And the Vision is a resurrection story because, as you probably know, the Vision was made from the carcass of the original Human Torch. Ultron takes the android body of the original Human Torch.
That's not how it goes in the movies.
Well, yeah, there's a long reason for that. But yeah, Ultron takes the body of the original Human Torch and makes the Vision out of it. And anybody will tell you that Avengers 57 is one of the all-time great comics. And there's a ton of all-time great comics in here. Vision is one of my favorite characters. This is one of the best eras of Avengers you're going to find, as this is issues 57 to 76. It's got the first Ultron. It's got a lot of things. So anywho, pick up Avengers Epic Volume 4 for some all-time great stuff. This is a lot of what you see in the movies. And as you say, what is rewritten a little bit for the movies. But
is that a comic book store? Yes. Iron Fist, we are a comic store, closed for shelter in place, but bringing you awesome videos because we love you guys and we love comics.
You can go to black-cat-comics.com, and that's everything you will need to know about us.
And yeah, recent news that J.J. Abrams has got Justice League Dark happening. Is it HBO or is it going to be on screen?
No, it's
or DC Universe.
Not DC Universe, but something like, I don't know, Netflix or.
But anyway, J.J. Abrams doing Justice League Dark. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm huge on Justice League Dark. I love the animated thing. I love both series. I love anything with Zatanna. The new era has Detective Chimp, which is super awesome.
Thanks, Iron Fist. We could use all the support we can get. Thank you.
Yeah, we love subscribers. I have a few of them watching here today, I would assume.
HBO Max. Thank you. It's HBO Max, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go.
You heard it here live first from CJ and Farhan.
Like I say, Justice League Dark is two eras of great books. Actually, I had a new 52 title that I liked a lot. Now the current thing is really cool as well.
Yes, Emo, we just talked about San Diego being officially canceled. Wah, wah. But because you would be an awesome addition to our swap meet, as soon as the shelter in place is lifted and it's safe for people to gather in small groups, we're going to do a swap meet again in our parking lot. So you're, of course, invited to sit up. We'd love to have you.
A couple of questions. Thanos versus Thor with the hammer. Who wins? Thor wins quite easily if Thanos doesn't have the glove. What most people don't really get is Thanos in and of himself is not particularly powerful. Obviously, with the glove, he wins pretty quickly. The other question, which comic character would you like to see on the big screen? Let's throw that to you first. Who's the character they haven't made a movie of that you would like to see?
Well, I would love to see it, but if they did it terrible, it would just crush me. And that would be Sandman, of course. They've been talking about doing a Sandman movie for 15 years. You know, directors and scripts have come and gone. Nothing's really stuck. And I'm kind of grateful because it sounds like the ones that were kind of on the table sounded awful. So I would love to see a very, very true to the story, Neil Gaiman approved Sandman movie.
Very nice. Off the top of my head, and similarly, I don't quite know how this would look because, like in the Batman animated series, he's often misinterpreted as a Joker character, but I'd love to see the Creeper. maybe in Justice League Dark, or maybe not in his own movie, but in something I'd like to see DC put in either the Creeper or Deadman. I think Deadman is an excellent guy for a movie.
Spectre.
Because 1,000 things write itself. Yes, a couple more I'd throw out there is Spectre or Phantom Stranger. The movies are never like the comic. That's just how that goes. Thanos was infinitely more, no pun intended, was way more powerful in the movies than you should have been.
Okay, so back to our resurrection stuff. So most of you on here on Facebook are already reading Deceased. Oh, it's so good.
Deceased.
You guys, man, seriously. You know, zombie guys, if you like horror books, if you like amazing art, this is a really well-told story of what happens when the antimatter equation goes wrong. And it's a little too close to home right now, if you know what I'm talking about. But we got the hardcover, we got whatever issues are available on our online store. I love this book. I thought it was genius. I thought it was cleverly done. I personally, not a big fan of zombies. I think they're overly done. I think we see them all the time. I think it's just like, you know, low-hanging fruit, honestly. As a horror fan, that's how I feel. This book made me change my mind about zombies.
That book totally surprised a lot of people.
So good.
I think a lot of people expected it to be, I don't know, just another zombie book. But like you said, great stories, great art, and it got a lot of people reading the book. I think even DC was a little surprised.
Yeah, and the Unkillables is equally good.
And from the
you can tell we're old. We have to go up real close to the screen. What does it say?
I think they messed up the Apocalypse character.
I'm from the UK. Can I order comics from you? Well, we don't currently ship outside of the US, but if you send us an email, we can try to make it happen. So info@black-cat-comics.com. Last time. The articles. Sandman is being pushed to happen more. American Gods and Good Omens was the gate opener for that to happen. Well,
I can see that.
You think Stardust and Coraline would have also been the gates? Those are
Coraline was huge. That was awesome.
Okay, back to.
Is it my turn?
It's your turn.
Okay, so one of my personal favorites, and because I lived through this, I spent years and years traumatized by this, like some fans, but not a lot of Marvel fans, or not a lot of modern fans. This is the Green Lantern Hal Jordan trade. Hal Jordan is, of course, the Green Lantern. The Green Lantern you all know and love. He's the Green Lantern I grew up with. I grew up a born and raised Marvel kid, but I loved Green Lantern because he was the outer space guy. Everybody's always in New York, but Green Lantern was in outer space. This guy has Emerald Dawn and Emerald Dawn 2. This is, sadly, the death of Hal Jordan. This is where he goes nuts, becomes the bad guy, destroys things, and dies to pay for his crimes. And I was outraged, like so many fans for years and years, because he's one of the great heroes of the DC universe. In the span of 6 issues, he goes insane, goes bad, kills people, and dies. You're like, well, what? You can't do that to Hal. He's one of the pillars of the DCU. And many people like me cried and complained and all of that good stuff. And then they gave us Kyle Rayner, and we hated Kyle Rayner. And then we all cried that we were going to get Hal back. And they swore up and down. We did get Guy Gardner. He was the Justice League Green Lantern forever. On and on and on and on and on it went. We all complained until the master Jeff Johns gave us this guy. This is the return of Hal Jordan. This is Green Lantern Rebirth. This is the trade officially is Green Lantern by Jeff Johns. There are now 3 volumes of this. It is not hyperbole or an overstatement to say really this is one of my favorite things of all time.
The Blackest Night stuff.
It leads into the Blackest Night stuff. This is all time great. If you're any kind of superhero fan, sci-fi fan, DC fan, any kind of comic fan, you're going to want to read this stuff. It is action adventure. It's high drama. It's all the things that you want in comics wrapped in amazing art.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time as the issues were coming out, I was telling everybody this book just got better and better with every every single issue. Every single issue explodes in your hands. So the death of Hal Jordan was super traumatic, and stayed that way for years and years. And DC swore that they would never bring him back, and we just had to learn to live with it. But then Jeff Johns said, no, that's unacceptable. I'm bringing him back. And he did. And it was amazing. It was awesome. Pick up all 3 volumes of this and keep going with it. Because, like I say, it really, really is all-time great stories, great art.
Okay, we've got a very, very important question on YouTube. Toby or Tom Holland Spider-Man?
Oh boy, that's
hard.
I'm gonna have to.
Both. Can I choose both?
Yeah, I don't know. And
I like them for different reasons.
You can make the argument that Spider-Man 3 brings the whole thing down, but I would say that 1 and 2 are quintessential Spider-Man. And so they're subtly different, but both very, very good.
And speaking of, you've got some Sam Raimi news.
Oh yes.
I totally forgot what it was.
Me too. Oh, it's Doctor Strange 2. See, I am old. Sam Raimi is, speaking of Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi is directing Doctor Strange 2, which makes me ecstatic because I love Sam Raimi. If you love wacky horror movies like I do, if you love Spider-Man 1 and 2, and again, to go back to that, and again, I'm totally split on this because I could go on about Tom Holland all day. But as the years have gone on, perhaps the awesomeness that was Spider-Man 1 and 2 have kind of diminished over the years. And I just want to throw it out there that I think Spider-Man 1, thanks to Sam Raimi and his love of Spider-Man, was at the time the best movie adaptation to a comic that I'd seen until
like Jonah from Spidey.
Until nice. Iron Man 1 came along.
Thank you, Iron Fist, for not mentioning the Spider-Man in between that. We won't even mention that. We'll just pretend it doesn't exist. I won't even go there.
But Tom Holland's excellent, and I love his I don't know, he really captures the essence of Peter Parker, and so that's why I say I'm really split with that.
So I have another one. If you are a fan of Hellblazer, you probably know the story. If you don't want any spoilers, plug your ears now. So this came out like 20 years ago, so 20-year spoiler, here we go. This is when Garth Ennis took over writing Hellblazer, and Constantine is a chain smoker, and he ends up with cancer, and he's really only got a small amount of time to live. So he's, saying his goodbyes, handling his affairs, doing all he can. He's got this last-ditch effort that he's going to try to do. So he basically creates a summoning circle and calls one by one separately the brothers of hell to come forward, and basically he's like, all right, you guys win. I'll sell my soul to you. And so he signs the soul to one guy, and the guy takes off. Another demon comes. It's like, okay, you win. I'll sign my soul to you. Takes off. Third guy, same thing. Signs the soul, takes off. So in the moment that he's basically dying and taking his last breath, all 3 demons show up wanting his soul and start fighting over who gets him. And in order for them to basically save face and not create a war in hell, they have to restore his life, restore his health, and basically walk away with nothing. Genius. I love that story. So he comes back, and the first thing he does, I love Constantine. First thing he does,
lights a smoke. There you go.
Because he knows now he can't die, because if he does, they're going to have a war in hell, making them vulnerable for the angels to take over hell. The end. The end.
Which is a quick chime in for me that I think Garth Ennis is one of the great writers of comics. I have
a strong stomach, though.
Yes, I admit I do have a bit of a hot and cold thing with him, but he really has a unique talent.
East
and
of
so
West.
Fun to read.
I have not read East of West. Have you read East of West?
I read the first volume, but I didn't keep up with it. I like its genre fusion. I try to get into Westerns, but I'm reading too many things all at the same time.
Got some questions here. Spider-Man 1 and 2 are amazing. What's your list for all Spider-Man movies?
Oh, I don't have a memory for that sort of thing.
I can't too. Old. Remember the gray?
I
We
would
talked about
say
the gray hair last week.
mine
That's a
goes
gray.
1-1-2-2. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, and then Tom Holland's Spider-Man 1, and then Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 2. I do not count Spider-Man 3.
I didn't like the recent Spider-Man 3 in Europe.
Yeah, I know that's 2.
That's 2.
But that one's still better than Spider-Man 3 with Venom and Sandman and everybody and their mother. And,
yeah.
So for me,
That's
it goes
true.
1-1-2-2, and the others don't count.
Yeah.
A lot like my Batman thing.
East. So got a fan of East and West art, but couldn't get past issue 15 over there. About the return of 4 horsemen away. Oh, so East of West is about the return of 4 horsemen away. So yeah, resurrection story.
There you go.
It's good. It's good. What are some of your favorite resurrection stories out there?
Andrew.
No love for Andrew Garfield. No, 0.
I don't know who that is.
I think he's the Spider-Man in between, right? Or no? He's the one in between.
Yeah, like I say, I don't
I don't even think did we even see him?
Yes.
See, I don't even remember.
But yeah, I blocked it out. A lot like Joel Schumacher Batman movies.
Electro, great one. Emo.
Well, see, yeah, I was going to get to that.
Gold Star.
Well, it starts with this one right here. Daredevil 190.
Bring it up so that the young folks can see. That's a good one.
This is Daredevil 190. This is the return of Elektra, followed up from Daredevil 181, which of course is the death of Elektra. When I was a kid, this book is what, 82? I don't know. When I was a kid, this was one of the biggest books in comics. 181 was the biggest book in comics.
Like Hush.
Bigger. The death of Elektra was one of the biggest books in comics. And yes, 190. And I mentioned it. This was my book for the Classic Corner in the newsletter this week. As I said, it's probably not, most fans probably aren't even aware of the Miller run of Daredevil anymore. But 100 years ago, it was the biggest thing in comics. And the death of Elektra was big at the time, mostly because back then characters didn't really die. It's totally a thing now. But back then it wasn't such a thing. Yeah, Marvel UK. I
Allison,
do love Marvel
we'll
UK.
comment on that after the fact because it's a very specific question. So we'll get back to you on that one. What else? Who's next? Me? You?
I'll go.
I already did mine.
I
did my Hellblazer.
Mine is The Return of Superman.
Shocker.
Well, I mentioned this a little bit like I mentioned The Return of Batman after Nightfall in the video. Then somebody went to the website, black-cat-comics.com, and bought them. So I can't really pitch that one, but I will pitch this one. The reason I mention this is because everybody, of course, knows about the death of Superman. Everybody bought the death of Superman. You probably have the comic. You probably have the trade. But a lot of people didn't keep going after the death of Superman. And since the recent animation, a lot of folks have gone back to pick this up. But I like to throw it out there. It's this big old chunky trade paperback packed with great art. That's a really cool Superman suit. You get Cyborg, you get Superboy, you get all kinds of great characters in this story. It's tons of great reading. Like I say, I mention it mostly just because everybody's got Death of Superman, but people don't really keep going with Return of Superman. And as a big Superman guy and as a huge Dan Jurgens fan, it's a really, really great book. So again, if you find yourself quarantined with a little time on your hands, pick up The Return of Superman, because this is days and days of great reading.
Okay, if you're not reading Dark Arc,
good one.
There's a problem there. It's not exactly a resurrection story, but it's basically, think about the ancient times when Noah's Ark was setting sail to save all of the creatures of the earth. Well, the devil was like, hey man, that's not cool. I've got my own people I want to save too. So there's a parallel arc that's called the Dark Arc, where this sorcerer warlock guy is rounding up all of the demons, all of the lower scary animals and creatures of the netherworld, and he's putting them on an ark and finding his own way to survive the great flood. So the art's a little wonky. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the art, but the story, you cannot be beat. So Dark Arc is a great one to pick up from Aftershock. So a non-DC Marvel book to recommend.
Been digging Aftershock. I like a lot of different
Aftershock's
Aftershock
good. Baby
stuff.
T, oh my god, so good. Scary, creepy.
Animosity is another good Aftershock book. Folks, readers.
Return of Damien. Nice.
That was a good one.
Hellbat suit was amazing. It's so amazing. I really liked the books during the death, Tomasi and Gleason's run. Yep. Return of Damien.
There's a few. Okay. Let me caveat this just a second to say there's a bunch of Back from the Dead Batman stories, and there shouldn't be. No one in Batman should come back from the dead, because the whole premise of Batman is the severity and the impact that death has on your life. If Thomas and Martha can come back from the dead tomorrow, then what's the big deal about being Batman? That being said,
I do want them to bring back Alfred, though. Is that so wrong?
Yes, it is. Sorry, but like I say, I have to preface this, and everybody will say, that's because you're a Superman guy. I have to preface this by saying that the main thing of Batman is the death of his parents. And so I don't think that Bat characters should come back to life. That being said, Batman himself has done it. As you say, Damien's done it.
Nightwing.
My one exception to my caveat is, of course, Jason Todd, because the way they brought back Jason Todd was super comic booky. And I love Jason Todd. But to throw it out there, I don't have it on me or handy, but you reminded me with mentioning Damien of Batman R.I.P. Batman R.I.P. was really, really good, and it culminated in the 2-issue Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader by Neil Gaiman, which is one of the best stories, Batman stories you're ever going to read. So pick up the Batman R.I.P. trade, which was really cool, and then pick up Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader, because that was also really cool. And yeah, the death of Damien was really exciting. That was a big deal at the time, and bringing him back was really cool. Blade of the Immortal, yes, that's also another good one. While I'm looking at it, and since you mentioned non-Marvel DC stories, let me throw some Bloodshot out there. He's getting a little attention because of the new movie and all that kind of thing. If you watch the video, you know I'm a huge fan of Original Valiant. I've been reading a lot of my Original Valiant. This is the first issue of the most current Bloodshot series, which is really great. It's sort of a little like Spawn, I guess you'd say. The guy is doing his thing, and then he's murdered, and he comes back and takes his revenge, blah, blah, blah. But it's a resurrection story, but it's also very timely and very awesome. I would strongly suggest coughing up the ducats for the big old omnibus of all the original hardcovers of all that Original Valiant stuff, but particularly Bloodshot. Grab the volume 1 of the original one, grab the volume 1 of the current Valiant Bloodshot stuff. Like I'm always saying, great stories, great art, and a little like East of West that was mentioned. It's a really great fusion of crime fiction and science fiction and superhero action adventure. Good stuff.
Yes. I have, again, another 30-year spoiler. So the last volume of Sandman, there's only 10 volumes. This is volume 10. Morpheus, what happens when an endless being who's been around since the beginning of time decides to quit? And so it's basically the end of Sandman and the resurrection of Daniel, who is the, I don't know, version of Sandman that I just could never get my teeth into. But the way that Morpheus, the original Sandman, dies is beautiful. Neil, magically brings all of the loose storylines together, and you laugh, you cry, and it's magical. So if you haven't read Sandman, shame on you. And if you had, volume 10's good for a reread.
Get it all the way to the end. There you go.
It's good.
I am going to stretch just a little bit and talk a couple of Star Wars books, because this is the first issue of the second volume of Marvel's main core Star Wars title, and this is the, I don't know, first issue of the third or fourth volume of the Darth Vader stuff. I have loved Marvel's everything that they've been doing with the Star Wars stuff. Why do I mention these in a resurrection? Because this all takes place during the Empire Strikes Back era, which is, of course, the resurrection of the death and resurrection of Han Solo. Han is presently in carbonite. And
but he's got life force readings on the side. It's got little digital, so he's not technically dead.
But he ain't technically alive either.
He's in stasis.
And so this book will bridge the gap between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which of course is the return of my main man Han. So that's a loose and stretching sort of way to say, read some Star Wars and read about the almost death and return of Han Solo. And of course, Darth Vader is a walking resurrection. He is the embodiment of the death of Anakin Skywalker and the rebirth of the Dark Lord of the Sith. Kenobi tells you that Anakin dies and that Darth Vader is someone else.
That's true.
In the same body. And I don't know. I think even at the end of Return of the Jedi, that's still open to speculation. But as I saw them back there, I was like, hey, Star Wars is kind of a resurrection thing. Kenobi dies and comes back.
So Arnell asked, have you guys been reading the new Sandman Universe books? So how do I say this nicely? Because I'm in the business of selling comics, not dissuading people from reading comics. But I'll tell you this. I read all of them when they came out because I was super excited. Dreaming, Lucifer, Books of Magic, House of Whispers, all of them. And about issue 4 to 6 into each one, I'm like, doesn't have the same standards as I'm used to in a Sandman book. Now, the dreaming, the art, and the universe, it all feels very, very Sandman, and I love that. But I just couldn't get into the main character. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Having said that, though, if you like the Books of Magic, if you like Lucifer, pick up at least the first couple of issues and see if it floats your boat. Wasn't for me, but doesn't mean it's not for you.
Comics are always hugely subjective that way. I always say, don't listen to me. Read it and decide for yourself.
Oh, Black Orchid was so good. All the Dave McKean covers were amazing.
Anything Dave McKean is going to be amazing.
You are 5 years old. You are discussing magazines.
Yes, we are discussing magazines. I got to read Black Orchid. So, folks, favorite resurrection? We can think of a character that has not died and come back.
We were talking about Wonder Woman. Has she officially died at any point?
I don't recall Wonder Woman having a Death of Wonder Woman issue. I think of the big guns. Wonder Woman is probably one of them. And as I say in all of this, comics goes back 100 years. I don't know everything. There are people that are bigger X-Men fans than me that might remember Angel's death. But I tried to really think about it. I think Sue Storm is the only Fantastic Four member that has not died and come back. Just about every Avenger has died and come back. Iron Man's done it probably 3 or 4 times. But folks, favorite stories. I've got kind of a fun one.
Darkseid has come back as a baby.
Yeah, that's true. That was awesome too.
He also wanted to talk about the Star Wars volumes and how they fit in.
How they fit into what?
And how they fit in with the movies.
Oh, it's really simple. The first of the 2. So Marvel did the main run of Star Wars from 1 to 75. And that takes you from the end of episode 4 to the beginning of episode 5. The current series that I just mentioned will take you from the end of episode 5 to the beginning of episode 6. So that one is pretty cut and dry. The Darth Vader ones, you should probably research because as I say this, I'll get this wrong. There's been a few different series, but of the 2 main ones that each ran 25 issues, one takes place right after, I think the first series coincides with the first Star Wars series, and that takes place just after the end of episode 4. And so Vader's on the outs with the Emperor because he's totally botched this whole thing. He's gotten the Death Star blown up. He doesn't know what's happened, any of that. So the first series takes place after episode 1 or after episode 4. The second Vader series takes place right after episode 3. And so he has just become Vader, and he's going out to finish off the rest of the Jedi. So I think that's about as good as I can do.
That's good.
With all of that. But read all of it because it was awesome, particularly the Darth Vader stuff. Great stuff.
Done, Kazi.
So a while back, Marvel did some books called The End, Marvel The End, Fantastic Four The End, this and that The End. Each character is meant to be Hulk The End. It's meant to be, obviously, that character's final issue, that character's last story. Sort of an alternate universe thing, of course, but, you know, how would this play out? And they did a whole bunch of different ones. And then that culminated into a mini-series called Marvel Universe The End. This was a little unlike those because this took place in the current modern Marvel universe, but it wanted to establish, the book is basically about Thanos' relationship with death and death's relationship with the Marvel universe. And this book was supposed to establish that everything we're talking about wasn't going to happen anymore. This was going to put an end to, as Daniel mentioned, the revolving door. This was going to put an end to characters dying and coming back, and death was going to mean something. I don't know how well that's worked out because, well, Cap has died and come back since then, a few others probably too. But it's still a really good book, as all things Jim Starlin are. Anytime you get into guys like Eternity, that's fun stuff. All that. I'm a huge fan of the big Marvel cosmic stuff. So Marvel Universe, The End, is it's a book about ending resurrections.
That's right.
Fun stuff.
Fun times.
So that's a lot of good examples of a lot of different things. We talked about some old stuff, some new stuff, some comics, some trades, covered quite a few different publishers. Gave you guys a lot to think about.
Some comic shop industry news.
So as we begin to wrap it up, questions, comments,
thoughts for next week.
Thoughts for next week.
Themes for next week.
Things you want to see on the show. Things you want to see on the website. We're just so awesome that we have satisfied your every whim. Perhaps. Keep in mind, everything you see behind us is on the website and for sale. I try and shake up this bottom. I try and shake up all of it as much as possible. I try and put things on this bottom row that are all super accessible to new readers and to anybody. And so as you rewatch the video, check out the stuff behind us, and if it strikes your fancy, pick it up.
What? Emo says Robert Downey Jr. is supposed to do Sweet Tooth through Netflix.
That's really awesome.
What?
We are up for Robert Downey Jr. anything, and we really like Sweet Tooth.
And Jeff Lemire, anything Jeff Lemire. Lemire? Yep. Is it Lemire or Lemire? Lemire?
It's Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds right.
Yeah, that is good news.
That's great. That would be amazing.
If
someone could adapt Jeff Lemire's Animal Man from New 52, oh, forget about it. That would be the bomb. That would be the bomb.
That would be.
So Hollywood, if you're listening.
They actually got to get going on all that Vertigo stuff.
They do.
There's a ton of stuff in there. I think about DMZ would probably make a cool movie.
Yes.
There's a lot of Vertigo stuff that they could dive into.
Any remaining questions? Hope you guys are doing well. Everybody doing all right? Staying healthy, safe, and sheltered. And why the Last Man? Why the Last Man be like really important right now? I think kind of apocalyptic. I agree, Emo.
Yeah, a movie for today's times.
Any other topics for next week you want us to try to cover? Movies, talk about, I don't know, whatever. How do we get to be so awesome?
Oh, real quick, jumping back, somebody had a question about the Spider-Man movies and Peter's relationship to Harry Osborn. Yes, Harry is totally justified in hating Peter's guts. And the only reason I say that for two reasons. And again, like all things, it's much more elaborated on in the comics. But really quickly, it's first and foremost to demonstrate that Harry is just as mentally unhinged as his father. You're supposed to look at Harry and how he treats people and see that his decline is inevitable. Harry is not the hero of the story. And second, you're also supposed to understand that that's how the world perceives Spider-Man. It's not really established that well in the movies. But everybody hates Spider-Man because J. Jonah Jameson has gotten everybody to hate Spider-Man, and he's made everything that's wrong in the world Spider-Man's fault. So Harry blames Spider-Man for the death of his father, and Harry is unhinged, and so he unnaturally overreacts to that whole situation. That's my personal thing. I don't make movies, but I have opinions on all things superhero.
Great to see you guys online. So wish I could see your awesome faces, but thanks for your comments. Thanks for your support. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
Stay sane.
Thanks for participating. Yes, stay sane. Keep up your positive attitude. Keep your chin up. We're just a few weeks away from new comics. We're just a few weeks away from the world getting a lot better. Want to thank everybody that has sent orders, that is buying stuff through the website at black-cat-comics.com. We really appreciate the support, especially in these crazy times.
You guys are awesome.
And we hope that it's bringing you fun and entertainment and passing your time. We hope you're sharing your stuff with your quarantine. So
nice.
Thanks for everybody who's participating in these online things. That's a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody that's supporting us through the website. That's a lot of fun. We really look forward to seeing you guys back in the shop as soon as possible. So stay healthy, stay happy, stay home, and keep reading comics because it's tons of fun.
Bye, guys.